So, welcome everybody. This is like the end of our trilogy, as we might define it, of the three masters, Albini, Magistretti, and Castiglioni. We left Castiglioni at last only because of availability, of course, but they are, let's say, on the same level, the three different masters, because even though they have three different approaches, we might say there are some connections between those three, but throughout that creative process. But let's say that Castiglioni among these three was, I might say, maybe the more showman because he also knew how to present himself to the audience at the best, and also was very respected as a teacher. He taught for years and years, and I think he was able to translate and to convey his methodology to many young designers who then became actually quite famous. I wasn't lucky enough to meet him, but as many designers of my generation, we were much influenced by his point of view also in his life. And many times, actually, his approach allowed me to escape from difficult situations because design very often is not only to design a nice project, a well done project, but it's also a lifestyle. And according to me, Castiglioni was a designer, but also a master who always try to take the good things out of everything. At the same time, also Munari. I mean, there are many connections between Munari and Castiglioni. They both had this. Also linked to what you said earlier, because earlier you said that you like to throw little leaves out of your window. It's always this kind of child spirit and this kind of childhood. Keep it always alive in our life, and how to respect the purity and the pureness of the vision of the children, and to bring it into our adult life. And it's not an easy process, meaning that I have tried, and often when you use this kind of uh, child spirit in difficult situations, it's not easy to manage it, but you have to defend it. You have to defend it also because at the end, the risk is that we become all the same, gray, monotonous. And what I've always appreciated of the master Castiglioni was his ability in being elegant, respectful, respected, and at the same time to be brave enough to maintain his vision of life in a very free way, in a very creative way, just like a kid. Now, I don't want to anticipate some topics that you will discuss later, but many of his projects, maybe the most successful of his projects, I think they are the best expression of his approach to design. That is timeless, is eternal, because it goes beyond technologies, it goes beyond innovation. It's just a lifestyle. It's not linked to design something, but how do you live? And yeah, this is one of, uh, let's say, this is one of the ways that we try to teach to our students that design is not only a profession, but it is a lifestyle. Is how you design is a mirror of how you live in theory, let's say. Very often you are able to read the character and the personality of the designer through his or her objects. So I thank you, Giovanna, to be for your availability, also in this let's call it emergency situation, even though it's not an emergency anymore. But in any case, to come to us in a virtual way to talk about Foundation Castiglioni and about your dad Achille. So let's say that these kind of trilogy that we hosted, that we created with the foundations, was forecasted actually in school. Actually, it was 2 or 3 years that we were trying to find a way to meet all together, to have only one talk. We couldn't be able to do it in school, of course, but we will be able to do it online. So again, thank to your colleagues, and today I thank I thank you to be here with us. Well, thank you, Sergio. Well, I'd say that we could start. So let's start right away. First of all, thank you to be here online. I see slowly step that you are connecting one by one, but I am happy to do this online as well. I mean, it's a passion that we all have. Magistretti, Albini, and ourselves, we do the same job. Um, since they are the nieces, I am the daughter, but we all have this passion, and there's nothing that keeps us out of this job. We want to keep the memories alive. You are a passion of the design world. There are three different people, like you said, three different characters, but it's true. In common, we have the fact that we would like to share stories. Of course, doing this from our studios, from our foundations, they are fascinating because even though they are small, they inside they have a very peculiar mood. So I will try to recreate it with the presentation that I will share in a few minutes, and a little bit with my anecdotes. You mentioned a father, a very entertaining father. It was true, yes, but he was also using that to hide the fact that he was really shy, and he was able to bring the objects, at school, and he was one of the few teachers that went to school with his own objects inside of these kind of briefcases or bags, just like the Mary Poppins one. And he had this also this kind of sense of humor that distinguished himself from the elegance of Magistretti, or maybe the 100% purity of the silences of Albini. Albini for sure was, let's say, older than the two, Magistretti, Castiglioni, Munari, and all the other generation of designer, architects first and then designer. But it's true, it's wonderful to be able to tell a historical moment that actually is common for all of us, and it's right to share this into the home of the other people, especially to the foreigners who are following us. It's also interesting to exchange. I mean, really, do it. I'm here available for you guys because I'm really interested. Like my father said, if you're not curious, just let it go, give up. And actually, I'm really interested in what happens beyond this screen. Usually, when I have the visits here in the studio, I'm keen on knowing who are the visitors, what do they do in their lives. So I'm a bit curious, let's say. Um, I'm very curious and about the other people's lives. I mean, for example, the library full of colors of Elena, or other reality, or Sergio, for example, that while he was talking, there was like this sound of kids around. They were making a mess in the other room. I have a dog, for example, in my next room who is doing the same kind of mess. So it's also nice to to live like you said, in the middle of people. I mean, design has to be part of a behavior, part of the people. So I think the behavior of people, of course, changes constantly. We can't stop time. We can't freeze time. But the interesting thing is to see where the design is leading us. Even in this kind of period of, let's say, a quarantine of, I think it's positive because it gives you a lot of incentives, let's say, a lot of opportunities to create because we have more time. Also to the guys who are following us, they have more time to stop and think, to listen other people who are connecting with some small screens and are telling a story. So I think that this is the methodology that Sergio has since many time, this methodology of sharing, but also the Institute Malangoni itself, which decides not to bring only fashion, but also to bring the design, architecture, behaviors inside of the students' houses, the students' apartments, and this is very commendable. And I just wanted to give an historical frame of the foundation of Achille and his family, just like it was like a virtual tour of the foundation. So I have prepared a presentation that I will share now on your screen so you will see it. If there is any kind of problem, any kind of question, just interrupt me, no issue, don't worry. You can see it, right? Okay. So what I wanted to tell you is this family, this very peculiar family, because we are talking about Achille Castiglioni, Castiglioni's brothers, but actually everything started from the grandfather, my grandfather, that you can see on the screen, the oldest guy with the jumpsuit, a sculptor who lived in between the 19th and 20th century, born in 1894, and he was born a year before my age, so he died in 1971. So now you know my age. But unfortunately, again, I never met this man who actually built some monuments. Also, the door of the Duomo in Milan, the cathedral, the second, the one that you enter, there is the story of Sant'Ambrogio, the patron, Saint Patron of Milan, and it's done by him. And I have a lot of model in chalk, also in the studio, not only at home, that let us understand how these three sons, the three Castiglioni, who all went to architecture. Nobody became a sculptor because nobody chose to follow their father's path. But all the three Castiglioni's children decided to start architecture. Livio, the oldest, the one on top, was born in 1911. Unfortunately, he died in 1979. Meanwhile, Pier Giacomo, who is in the bottom of the right image, let's say the most serious one, he also worked a lot with Achille. He was born in 1913, died in 1968. Achille and Pier Giacomo started together to work in the studio. So Achille was born in 1918, but actually got a degree in 44. So he started to work alongside his dad. So basically, the three brothers, for a brief moment of time, they were able to work together. Also because they started to study architecture right after the Second World War. So in a city that was destroyed by the bombings, and so they had the opportunity to be real architects. So basically, they were born as architects with that kind of mentality, let me say, with a very wide, open mind, let's say. When Roger said, from the spoon to the city, I can tell you that maybe Castiglioni did the opposite. They went from the city to the spoon. And this is interesting because if you look at a very young Achille Castiglioni on the left in the studio, in his first days of the career, it becomes, let's say, an older Castiglioni, always with a pencil in his hands and always with a cigarette in his hands, because it's a whole generation of people who actually smoked a lot. They smoked really like they used to. Oh, luckily, we have different habits now, but I mean, there was architecture studio, but same Albini and Magistretti as well. And they were full of smog actually inside of the studio. And it also brought to design things because, I mean, you see that next to him there is already an ashtray designed by him because he needed it. So Achille Castiglioni worked next to a woman, let's say lead next to a woman. Usually either you meet the mistresses, the daughters, the wives. There are always some women revolving around such people, such important people like Achille. In this case, my mom is not mentioned a lot. She was very strict, very strict, because she needed to balance her husband, a very playful Achille Castiglioni. So I have to say that my childhood has been, on one hand, wonderful because my dad was entertaining with a sense of humor, and on the other hand, I had a really strict mother who actually brought both of us in the right way. Let's say I'm the last daughter of three, and let's say that in the family I was always being considered like, let's say I was always being cuddled and spoiled, which was an advantage, I can say. The fact that I was a daughter at the time, a kid, my dad actually hoped to have a boy, and actually he was already quite old, quite adult when I was born, and actually I had to design lamps, disassemble, assemble, and take the IKEA's furniture, build them. So in our family we did a lot, and also thanks to my mom, we opened this studio. My brother, I mentioned my brother, older brother, 20 years older than me. Let's say that they took their time between one son and the other, and we are two. Uh, Working in the foundation, but we didn't want to work as designer or neither as architect. We both wanted to do something else. Maybe because we were so full of such a successful dad, and also he was very present with us. Maybe with my brother less, because when my brother was born, Achille was at the beginning of his career, so he didn't have a lot of time to dedicate. So unfortunately, Carlo probably didn't enjoy like I did. Carlo became a doctor, and I am a geologist. So there are two very different choices, distant from architecture and design, but actually it brought us to work in this space, in this environment, in this studio. Especially, I am so affectionate to the man that Achille was. It's basically my father never lack of anything. I mean, I never realized that my father was a very famous character. I didn't care. He didn't care as well. So I have to say that also the very fascinating part of all my path in the studio and of the foundation is that we opened the studio thinking, okay, nobody will come. Some people maybe who own a Castiglioni's object at home, they will come here to discover the stories behind the design, but nobody will come. Actually, in time, we discovered that not only there was the will to tell the thousands of projects that Achille did, because he used to say that I've designed a lot, I have worked a lot, and I've never got bored. Because as you can see in this slide, the objects that he designed, they go from a vacuum cleaner to a projector, lamps, a spoon for mayo, coffee machine, a bookshelf with some wheels. Again, lamps, a lot of lamps. An armchair that he called Paulette because poltrona and letto is armchair and bed, so it's like arm bed. And also an extraordinary aspect of the time, to find companies who believed in such projects, and they started to kind of marry these architects, especially during the 60s, with the companies such as Floss, Zanotta, Cassina, Alessi, Cartel, Billion Vega for radio. Um, Old companies which started to follow these architects, to believe in them, very young architects, just like you guys tomorrow after the course in Marangoni, and to find the opportunity to experiment in these companies, to be paid, experiment, and to start the production of objects that still today are in production. This is another aspect that then we will examine in detail. Of course, I mentioned the fact that they were born architects. They wanted to design, first of all, buildings, so architecture. Right after the Second World War, this is the building of the Permanente. Then once the quarantine is over, we will go and check. This is in Via Turati, and they designed one of the first skyscrapers of Milan. In Milan, 11 floors, so nothing extraordinary, it's Milan though. So it's one of the most, there is the church in Via delle Termopili. I don't suggest you to visit the church of my father there, because I'm more Le Corbusier and Gio Ponti, but my father actually designed 191 architecture projects and 400 and more than 400 exhibition places. And I tell you this not because I want to brag, but because he also had the way to design in architecture and also for exhibitions a lot of space. So to design an exhibition place, it was like a gym for him. He said, in the moment I can design a lamp, the spaces in relations to man, and to understand what an exhibition is, a space for an exhibition is, and to design spaces for this exhibition has always been very important for Castiglioni. Also because many of these projects were born for exhibitions, and they're still in production. I was saying the fact that you share stories, and Sergio knows it. To see these videos, I mean, I miss a lot to be able to hug all these students coming to visit us. That in the years increased a lot, I have to say, and it's always a pleasure for me because when you open the door, and you never know who is going to appear, let's say. But for everybody, I invent different stories, so otherwise I get boring. So I will never be able to do like a visited tour because I will always make it different. But just because I don't want to bore Sergio now, for example, that every time he comes, at least he finds new objects and new stories, right, Sergio? Well, actually, he did so many projects that why should you explain always the same 10? Yeah, it's a good challenge for me actually because every time Sergio comes, every time I invent, and we actually move the objects around the studio. Again, it's not an architecture studio. Today is a museum. It's not still, it's not frozen, let's say, because every time you enter from this door, Piazza Castello 27, so let's start this virtual tour. Um, you find right away, of course, the doors open and linear, the small basset hound waiting for you. And inside of the studio, you have four rooms basically. There are the four that you can visit because this is the path, the circulation. But these rooms inside they have so many objects that every time stories are different. It's one of the few museums, like the other two foundations, where you can touch anything, anything you want. And this is also, I think, an important choice. So to let the audience touch the objects because they are there, they are talked about. Of course, the museum ladies like Albini, Castiglioni, and Magistrati, they have a certain taste in telling the stories of the family, but also having a space where you can tell the history of design. I think it's a very good thing that a lot of people abroad start to envy, actually, start to be jealous of. Okay, now I will invite you, of course, I invite you to come to visit us in the studio directly when all of this will be over. In this moment online, in our website, Fondazione Achille Castiglioni, there is a virtual tour that you can attend, let's say. On the banner, it starts a video designed by the Polytechnic of Milan that puts you inside of a space that is a virtual tour. Yes, you might have also the 3D goggles and to see the space in 3D, but it's a space that you will see as empty. Meanwhile, here you have images of the studio and how it has been evolved during time. Boxes, the podding shapes, the arco lamp. Um, in this space we have the radio on the right. We have a desk designed for me when I was a daughter. We have the technical floor because we moved them to create more space in the room. There are drafting machines and there are a lot of material because this space that you see in the back was dedicated to materials and it was very important to him because he was able to choose the materials from that wall. And meanwhile, in this room that is let's say in between the previous one and the meeting room, there are two elements that I can't describe. It's a mirror. It's a huge mirror. You just have to come, let's say, go against it like many people do. And actually my dad loved to make jokes and to make pranks, so actually it's a 45-degree mirror, so if you don't know it you will just go straight into it, hoping to I don't know, say hi to the person next to you. Meanwhile, the other beautiful object that is in this room, as you can see, very important, is this display of the anonymous objects. I have actually some of them here with me. I am in the Castiglioni's house, so where I grew up with my father and my mother, and I still live here in between the memories and the objects. So also here in the house, it's full of displays and it's full of anonymous objects. It's just a passion that my father had, that was brought also into the studio. It was also a consequence of his great curiosity. I mean, he collected these kind of objects because the objects were peculiar, so there might have been a source of inspirations. Absolutely, yes. In fact, we will see a few of them in the presentation. I will explain them because the famous quote, "If you're not curious, just let it go, just give up." It's one of the ingredients that it's hard to teach to the future designers, but actually, it's the thing that we should manage every day. Being able um, to look at something, even under a table. Under a table, there are a lot of objects that have the smallest details that can be translated into a project of industrial design. So to observe anonymous objects, it's also a very humble way to say, look, someone before me designed a fan, a screwdriver, something smart that then I can transform into something else. So I start right away to show you one of the objects that you know very well. I didn't find the wooden one, but I think that the clothes peg. I have to close though here. Yeah, the peg here. The clothes peg. It's a classic and it's wonderful. It's perfect. And this peg then became a weird thing, a weird wooden peg with a ring. And well, okay, but this allows you, for example, to place inside of here the bags, for example, the biscuit packaging when they're open, so you can block them by this kind of peg. So we already like wood, and that's perfect. But if you want to switch to this kind of peg with the shape of a biscuit, just to close the biscuit package means that we exaggerate. We really went too far. I mean, you don't need to reach the shape. You don't need to design the object with the shape of the intent of that object. You don't need it because at the end you can also close it with that one, with the first one. So this thing always brought me to talk about Achille Castiglioni and to observe, to look around. Still today, how many smart objects do we have around us that I'm continuing to collecting this kind of stuff because these are the impulsive passions that we were talking about also before with Elena, that we always want to focus on a certain kind of things. So instead of collecting minerals, just like my husband does, also a geologist, I collect smart objects that are cheap and that can also tell a story. And so let's move on. So again, this is the meeting room, full of objects also of other people. Because the other wonder of my father was being humble. And you can see from the fact that in his studio there is a Breuer chair, two chairs by David Holland, Mario Bellini, Enzo Mari, the Spring by Guy Aulenti, and many other objects by other designers. So also this is another aspect that is quite peculiar. So to look at the other people's work, to have them next to you and in a meeting room as well. One of the roles of the foundation is to tell stories, yes, but also to put in production historical objects, or let's say iconic, but there are so many that either you have new objects that we would have been ready for the design week to put them in production with the last project of my father that he left in a drawer. But stay tuned, as they say. At least keep yourself updated also online and you will see it. But one of the projects on which we focused a lot is this one. It would be very nice to let you see it, to show that to you. This one, the bulbo. The lamp was presented in 1957 by Castiglioni's brother in an exhibition in Triennale, and the interesting thing is that the Castiglioni brothers experimented in this project like a lamp, very simple, a bulb, a light bulb, with a wire in tungsten that at a certain time with Floss Company. We've been working for many years, not only our father. As a foundation, we work in the re-edition of the projects with the company. So they added all the technology part in a very good way, and they have recreated this wire in tungsten that you see here inside of the bulb, exactly with the same color, with the same temperature of the one that we have hanging in the meeting room. So this is also technical work that we do, and it's very interesting because it maybe improves the objects. We don't know. So we don't want to keep the originality mandatory. Let's say we're not that interested. If we can improve technology, that's good. If we can adapt the objects in our contemporary days, very good. And how happy my father would be to see these objects in production today with LED technology, because everything is new. So you also agree on the new version by Gercic? But well, that is Gercic and this is Castiglioni, and don't provoke me. We will see it later. So for sure my father was more open than me, also because I need to protect the heritage and I need to tell the stories. So froze, let's say, the suggestion by Sergio, but we will see it later. So I just wanted to show you this picture just to show how much he wanted to bring his objects to his students. So many anonymous objects, let's say, we mentioned them earlier, but that can be, I don't know, very different one from the other. So for example, this collection of hammers maybe was an inspiration for me to become a geologist, or all these glasses that he was like putting on, and it was very funny, but he didn't want to be funny for me as a daughter, but actually he brought these glasses to the university during classes. So hundreds and hundreds of students were laughing with him. So he was really also he was able to laugh at himself as well. So they were not only functional, but also they had a funny side. So we should also talk about the shape and the function of the scissors, for example. Another very interesting topic, because the scissors cut, but according to what it cuts, the shape is different. So it's another interesting collection that I suggest to observe and to study. So open, I don't know, a drawer tonight in your kitchen and try to look at all the scissors you have. Let's say compare them and see if they actually are functional. For example, if they are the kid scissors that have the rounded tips, if they are the scissors used for decorations, they're all different, very interesting scissors. For this reason, in the centennial in 2018, in the anniversary, I have been quite irreverent because I wanted to increase the collection of anonymous objects, and so I've asked to 100 designers. This is why the title of the exhibition was 100% Achille, because 100 designers, and then actually there were more. They all brought a gift to Achille, just like Achille was still there with us. They were just knocking our door, the dog barked, and they arrived with a package. With almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them. They arrived with a gift, with a packaging for his birthday, and it was an emotion that still today I can't give up, because it was fantastic to see a Gercic knocking at the door of the foundation, bringing his gift, a kilo. He brought a kilo weight just to show how Achille Castiglioni weighed. Or a Jasper Morrison, who brought a staple, Michele De Lucchi with a hanger, Alessandro Mendini with a hat, Patricia Occhiola who arrived with a meter for profile, but also Marcel Vandas brought like a celebration there on top. For my Fantasma brought a broom. Uh, I don't know, really, a lot of foreigners, and as well, Italians and foreigners, they pay their homage to Achille Castiglioni, and they didn't bring their project. They just brought an anonymous object that still lives in their houses and also in the foundation. So this is another very important message. Why? Because Achille Castiglioni had this passion, the anonymous object, as I said. It could become a suggestion to become something else. So not only the habits. Someone said, Sergio Nava was saying that the habit of design objects that are useful, because in that moment you need an ashtray, for example, you need some silverware, you need some dresses. But when you have that kind of object, you can refer to already existing objects in a very calm way. I mean, there are some objects around us that might be transformed in something different. And by the way, about this series of silverware for Alessi, designed in 1987, was awarded with the Compasso d'Oro, one of the most important awards that Achille Castiglioni was, I'd say he cared, but not that much. But what I'm interested in showing is the starting point. So basically, the pencil of a builder became the inspiration for the shape of the silverware. But in this image, you see how it's made. So you have this little parallelepiped that is squashed in the blaze part in order to become a knife. So it's not like two objects that are joined together. It's also easy to produce the object then. So the company just followed the product, just followed the project from the beginning to the end, in order to follow the passion of my father. So to reduce the components of an object at its minimum. Sergio mentioned the humor and the entertainer side of our father. This is one of the pictures that I love the most, because I remember my father doing this kind of picture with all this noise of the silverware opening. And actually, also a spoon, a coffee spoon, a teaspoon, it's also a teaspoon. I'll show it here now. And in such an object, you have a pencil, classic pencil of a builder with a rectangular section, very simple. The pencil that you usually put in the pocket of your blazer, of your jacket, that then becomes a silverware. In the same way, thin as the pencil, so nothing extraordinary. But in the meantime, it has four rays, because we, as Italians, we love to do this kind of job when we eat spaghetti. Foreigners envy this because they make a mess. I don't know why the foreigners always need the spoon to eat the spaghetti, but with four prongs, it's easier. Well, my wife is French, and it's been 11 years that we've been together. She still needs a spoon to do it. There's nothing that we can do. So these are the habits, though, as you can see. The habits that you try to change, but sometimes it's just too difficult. This is the knife that I mentioned. It's not two elements joined together. It's just one part, the blaze part, is thinner. There's a small detail here to be able to cut and to lean on your finger, your index finger. When you cut the meat, for example, you need to put pressure here at this point. So little details, really, but fundamental. And this is the teaspoon. In the teaspoon, he did like another kind of operation, which is kind of funnier in a way. It's something that I do with my sorry, with my top, that you can do. You can do the same thing with a spoon, with a teaspoon. So only by rotating in your fingers the spoon, you have the same effect of the top. And this might become a serious project, but at the same time playful. So the feeling that you need to have at this point is, let's say, affectionate, because The objects keep you company, they make noise, and again they are good company, let's say, to us. So now I will, by the way, is there any questions so far? Well, no, actually, if you want, the Q&A session will be at the end, so that if someone wants to intervene, there is also the chat. So guys, if you need to intervene, you can start to write, and then maybe at the end we read everything. So let's move on in looking at this. The spot that is more linked to the lamp. This is Lampadina project. I have it here. Another project that was born with the will to be inspired from the film of the movies. So basically, the wire it's around the base of the lamp. You choose the length that you need. The question that I always ask to my student is why there is a hole in the base. Here, you see, there is a hole in the base. So when there is the question, the Q&A session, we will see, I will actually ask some questions. So start to think about why in a base of a lamp there is a hole. At the bottom, you can't see it now, it's at the bottom. So in this slide that you see on the left is the floss window shopping window when the lamp is presented during the Christmas time, of course, and the Christmas tree is one of the symbol of the Christmas holidays. I mean, that you can't avoid during Christmas time, at least in Italy. There is this kind of mania of the Christmas tree, and Castiglioni in a way made fun of the Christmas time in general by saying, okay, let's have the lamps creating the shape of the Christmas tree. So Lampadina is the Italian name of light bulb, and also here we have just a base, an electric wire, a light bulb, and that's it. So basically, reduction of the components at its minimum and call it light bulb, lampadina. Very simple. Am I wrong, or it started not as a product? It should have been like a gift to the journalists and then became a product. But well, my father wanted to give this as a gift to the journalists, as a gadget for the premiere of the Floss store, the openings of the Floss store in Turin. Yes, it was given as a gift to the journalists, but according to him, it should have been an object for everybody, as a gadget for everybody. So, a very IKEA concept, let me say. It was cheap because it was made out of few elements. So it was born with this purpose, yes. And with the same spirit, but now let's say switch into my childhood books and my will of telling the stories very quickly. Now you are forcing me to sit in a chair on a desk on a chair in front of a desk. But Sergio knows I always move, and here I chose to have a Castiglioni in 2 seconds. It's a flip book, so you go back to your childhood in a moment. And I have designed, I can't draw even a cat, so I asked Sara Vivan, this illustrator, to tell a story through a flip book. The flip book to me is basically the story that it's like a cartoon, basically. It's like a cartoon, you just flip the pages, you see this kid who takes lampadina. And here I actually almost told you why there is a hole at the base of lampadina. So again, in 2 seconds you see a mother reading, a dog that is curious about what the daughter is doing. And by the way, the daughter is sitting in a Zanotta project, not the Castiglioni ones. So I did actually 2 books. They always ask me to write a book, but I would never be able to write a serious book. Also on Basello, the desk that my father designed for me when I was a kid, there is a father playing with his daughter, taking his daughter from this desk to her, from her desk to bookshelves that he designed a few years later. So it's my own way to tell a story very quickly, because when I was a kid, I've always received flip books from my parents, because we are bombarded by videos very quick. In 2 seconds you need to say everything you have to say, but you also need to leave a trace. And to me, I mean, paper to me leaves a more noticeable trace. I mean, this is also a video you can look at. You can watch it in our Instagram page. This is not the interesting part, but I was interested in the fact that the stories we tell might also become very simple. So they don't have to be very pompous. They don't have to be full of difficult words. I like to think that people approach design because it's useful, because they understand it right away, because it's not too philosophical. There isn't too much theory around it, too difficult to explain. So these objects were born to be used. This is the hole, the famous hole at the reel. Now I don't have the presentation, so the lamp is here. You just put the wire, and at a time you realize that there is a hole. Many people bought this lamp and they never realized that there was a hole here at the bottom. They actually go home and they tell me, well, in my version there is no hole, and it's just used to hang it on the wall. It's the simplicity that brings us to look at the objects like we are kids, as kids. Probably Paola mentioned this word of Albini, like why, perché. Uh, she didn't mention the R, because Albini pronounced the R in a different way, but she mentioned the word why. And why, I mean, yes, it's the word of the kids, always asking why. The question is always why, how it works, why they did it like this. And this is very, very fascinating to me still today. Going back to the presentation, so I'll try to make a sense out of this talk. So I've already translated this. So what I wanted to tell is how the objects that was born for an exhibition and why it is used in an exhibition. This is 1957. Castiglioni's brother, in one of their first exhibitions in Villa Como, their own room. So basically they displayed these objects, quite anonymous, and some of them designed by them, and they put them together without a style. So today's apartments, in our magazines, today we browse a magazine of the field, we browse them and we look at some houses that are very perfect built, very coordinated. The white, you need the white couch, the white lamp, and maybe I just put a little bit of color. No, Castiglioni's house has always been just like you see it here in this display, without a style that links it. If you have the ugly painting, this was an ugly painting of my grandfather. But if you are affectionate to it, you keep it. Then maybe next to it you also put a reproduction of Populaire, because it's a completely another style and you like it more. Or you have a TV. This is a project by Castiglioni. A TV that already in 1957 probably was already boring as a technology, and it was just started to be produced in Italy. And so they put a weight on top. So if you're bored, you throw it away. A chaise longue. You don't want to have it. If there is a friend coming over, just put it there. Or maybe the mezzado stool. Why not? And why not the armchair, like with the shape of a cube that looks very rigid, and as soon as you sit on it, you just go deep, very deep, and it has also some wheels to bring around. Why not? The chaise longue hanging on the wall, fountain for water. Why not? Instead of going to the bathroom, you can drink the water from there. When I was a kid, actually, in my bedroom, I had this fountain, and all my friends actually thought I was crazy. I don't know why Castiglioni had the fountain. Actually, I had like water balloons in my in my house, and everything was waterproof. They always asked why do you have the fountain in your bedroom, and therefore I started to throw water balloons everywhere. So I wasn't that serious. I just wanted to show you that again in the Studio Castiglioni we present the original exhibitions, the original displays of Castiglioni, thanks to a designer called Marco Mazzini, and we were able to recreate the same space to tell the story, for example, of Mezzado. Mezzado has this drawing, this sketch. On the left it's more sketch, on the right is more technical, but Castiglioni only wrote a chair just like the farmer. So again, few components, all tools coming from the farming environment, the screw on the bottom right and a piece of wood. So you can put it everywhere. And this is like today's environment. Let's say it's very chic today to look at the design couch, the design table. By the way, the red one with the 3 legs is designed by Castiglioni, the design lamp, also the carpet, the rug, the pillows, everything is designed. So in this house, everything is designed besides these beautiful doors that probably are the old doors of once upon a time. Look at the doorknob, they're quite high. So in Castiglioni's house, actually, the doorknobs and especially, the handles are all low, very low, because Munari was a dear friend of my father, and he said, well, you are a small daughter, so you need the switches or the handles at Giovanna's height. Otherwise, she can't turn the lights on, for example. So everything needs to be, in a way, designed for the babies, because Munari was able to let the children feel adult and the adult feeling like children. So I always felt adult when I played with Bruno Munari. I mean, I never realized that Bruno Munari was, that the kid in front of me was Bruno Munari. And play with them is like playing with 2 other kids, a bit older than my peers, let's say, both very genuine. And if my father has seen these copies, he would have said, if they copy, it means that they like it. I know, Sergio, I know that you are not nodding. No, I agree. Also, Munari said it, but all those generations, actually, they were in favor of copies in a way. Well, actually, that's quite funny to us, but yeah. So the other message that I wanted to leave to these kids, these guys and girls who are following us today, is to design in a team. Of course, if you are at home behind the screen, it's harder. But as you see, we are all together around a virtual imaginary table telling a story. We can do it. We can share information for the community, which is one of the words that we are, let's say, hearing a lot in this period. In 1962, Castiglioni, for a bar, actually, for a beer shop, in 1962 designed the beer shop with inside all the objects that he designed for this space. This was one of the first spaces of sharing, where people went to drink a beer, but also to eat. One of the first pub, let's say. Now we are, of course, used to have restaurants, pubs, bars, all designed. At the time, it was quite fascinating to see how the Castiglionis designed Lampada, Splugenbau, the draft beer, the bar stools, the tray for beers, with the little gap you see there, so even if the beer spills out, you don't ruin it. So it was a 360 degrees design project, let's say, looking at the needs, the necessities of the customers, of those who went to, who used to go to drink a beer in that place. These projects, these objects are still in productions. Look at this image, that then I will show it to you by taking the presentation out of the screen, because it's one of the objects that is really needed. And it's a kind of hanger, it's a valet stand but also used for the umbrellas, again for a hanger. Um, it brought to the design to the creation of many other kind of valet stands. So coat hangers, a lot of objects coming for with the Zanotta company. And just like today, we have a special relationship. As my father had a special relationship with Alessi, this is one of our iconic objects, the spoon for the mayo, and this is one of the objects that we love to explain because it's still in production and it's still useful. Maybe not for mayo, maybe also for mayo, but maybe for yogurt, for Nutella, for any kind of um, slimy things, let's say, inside of a jar. In fact, it's called a slick. So the two Castiglioni's brother, they didn't want to design a beautiful spoon, but they followed the section of the jar. So the object become, let's say, is at the jar's service in a way. Basically, the important part of the project is the jar, and then I create the spoon in order to have the good service, let's say, for the user, because the users need to take all the jam, the Nutella, the mayo out of the jar. Of course, there is a flat part of the spoon and then a concave one. So I leave this in English already, so you just check it. But also this gives me the occasion to tell you two very important objects. One is the alcohol lamp, and the other one is the switch that I have here on my neck, and that in some way you have it all the apartments. I like the fact that the objects are in the museum, yes, but the interesting thing is that would be even more pleasant, and people don't know that behind that object there is a designer. Maybe they question themselves, maybe, but this is the switch. And it is a designed object in the tiniest detail, but it just entered into everybody's houses. It's cheap and it works because it does two things: turn the light on and off. So it's not too braggalicious in a way. Maybe alcohol lamp compared to this object that is very cheap is just a switch. You can find this at like any kind of electrician's store. Meanwhile, alcohol lamp has a story that was born because the Castiglioni brothers went to Paris. They fell in love with the pole lamps on the streets of the lumière on the streets. So they brought home the concept and they brought it in this way. They said, okay, they decided to draw it like this. This is an image that I think it's very contemporary. It's like it was already born for Instagram. It's like if Castiglioni was already like advanced, let's say. I'm talking about the sketch on the left. From here you can understand everything, how it's used around the table, probably a Salinen table, so another tribute to another important architect of the Bauhaus school. You understand how the electric wire goes through, how many components it has. It shows you a very small detail of connection between the three elements, B, C, and D, which actually they are connected just like they're like a telescope or a fishing rod. So I think that this is the right storytelling of alcohol lamp in the moment in which we need to save, on one hand, maybe because I'm a geologist actually, we need to save a piece of Italy because we have this extraordinary marble mine. They use also the ancient Romans. They use that marble to create their own things. So inside there is an infinite story, even just in a marble pit like that one, a quarry like that one. So in this sketch, maybe you ask yourself why there's a hole in the marble support. But I'm sure that Sergio actually could tell us. Should I tell it? Should we leave the students with the doubt? Okay, should we launch like a quiz? Okay, I see Elena connected, that is just doing some wonderful gestures. Perfect, exactly. So here, unfortunately, it is explained. So with this system, It's very, very hard for me to make a quiz because I always want to give the answers. But what you never saw is how the cats, my brother's cats, interact with the base with the support of the arco lamp. So they play a lot with balls going throughout one side and the other, like I did actually when I was a kid, and like the children of my friends do with the model cars. So don't use arco lamp in this way. So today it's very easy to see in a magazine arco lamp on an armchair. I mean, it's a classic, really. Like the design magazine, you find the arco lamp, put it like this, and you just bump your head into it and you get angry with Castiglioni. This is what I don't like. I mean, I also like to uh, bust this myth of the Italian design. Okay, the arco lamp is good on a table and so on. Actually, um, some students of design a few years ago, they created a sticker at 25 euro to put on the wall of the room. So on the right, if you don't have the money in the beginning, you're young, and I don't have the arco lamp at home still. By the way, I think I'll never have it. But I bought the shadow of the arco lamp at 25 euro to put it at home. So you never know. In the meantime, I have the shadow of the lamp. I think it's very poetic. But I just wanted to say, besides being an icon of the Italian design, it's one of the first objects that when you ask the question of which object do you like in Italian design, this is one of the first that is mentioned. It's very iconic. But behind this object, there is a whole impact that it had also on the interior design that is very interesting, because probably this object was like the beginning of a revolution of the interior, I think, because you took the chandelier, let's say, out from the ceiling and you put it in another place. Yes, I mean, in this way you don't occupy the ceiling, you bring a point of light on the table without drilling holes anywhere. And I have to say, this is an aspect that I really like to teach to my students, because it explains in a very simple way the impact that a simple object like a lamp can have on our everyday lives, on our user experience, but also the impact that it might have on in a social way. Because again, the interior design, until the day before the arco lamp, they were set in a very specific way. It's like before the lamp and after the lamp. After the lamp and after a whole series of objects, they also changed the way they arranged and they furnished our apartments and how to live them. Yeah, surely, especially the arco lamp is it actually defined a very specific moment in history. Um, it's still in production. I think it can be used in your house to save space. Let's say a lot of people say that it occupies a lot of space, but it's made out of very few elements. You just need to have a very high ceiling. If you are a Japanese, for example, they design a lower version of arco lamp because the ceilings in Japan are lower, and that's it. I have to say that to give you also, I mean, the lamp gives you also enough space to walk around the table. In fact, there are hundreds of copies of this lamp. Even the Twiggy of Foscalini, by Mark Sadler, I think it's one of the most beautiful copies of the arco lamp, because he found a new material and he actually lightened the lamp even more. So, by the way, I have a presentation of 100 copies of arco, one nicer than the other and one uglier than the other. But I think that you need to see them all, because in all of those copies there is like maybe a clever thing or a stupid thing that is added. I mean, from Instagram I am downloading like everything, really. I can find any kind of arco lamp. This is Parentesi. brackets or parentheses, another project, 1969. In the number one that you see here, this is the drawing that Pio Manzù did before he passed. One of the projects that Pio Manzù left, a car designer, by the way. He unfortunately died with a lot of projects unfinished. He died in a car accident between Milan and Turin. He was going to present one of his projects for Fiat, and by Gandini, so Floss asked Castiglioni to rearrange this project with 4 neon inside. It was a hall with 4 neon inside and a screen. Castiglioni didn't like boundaries, so he took the object, took the project. He was enthusiastic about it, and so he started to develop the project from, let's say, from number 1 to number 6. The project is a bit changed in the shape, of course, where Castiglioni changed the weight. There is also brackets. You see now the reference to the name. I mean, the name is a consequence of the shape. There is a metallic wire on which you have the central element going through that allows you to change the point of light by 360 degrees, so you can basically rotate it. And this wire is like the wheel of a bike, and it creates like this noise, and this noise is like unforgettable. I mean, in my bedroom I have lived with parentesi since I was a kid. I mean, I was stupid, so I played a lot with the weight. So a lot of times I just brought the lamp down in a way, I knock it down. My mom used to notice it like right away. Just by the noise that I made, she noticed that I broke something. And here my mom showed up every time I was playing a little bit with this lamp. But still today is in my bedroom, in my studio, and everything. And this is one of the projects that actually entered in the apartment, the houses of many people, and many people don't know that it's designed by Castiglioni or Pio Manzù and Castiglioni. And that's perfect. This is very IKEA as a philosophy. I mean, I take it as an example, because the packaging is this blister that you can see in the bottom of the right slide. It was sold exactly with this packaging, so you went home with a kind of skateboard with 8 elements that you could just assemble by yourself. So the concept of the parentesi the instruction booklet of parentesi was this one. Very IKEA. So you have a fissure. So I apologize, so you can also see who annoys in Castiglioni's house. This is Linea. Well, you arrived in the perfect moment. We opened the brackets also to you. You also like parentesi. Since she also liked the weight of parentesi as well, and it's 5 kilos, the weight here, 5 kilos of rubber that she really likes. There are a lot of rubber elements. Her name is Linea line. This is the wheel, basically the bicycle wheel that I've always had. Say hi to all the students. So just few elements. At the end you have an electric wire and a switch. But with few elements, in 88 minutes and 35 seconds, I can assemble parentesi for my friends. So you're in quarantine, call me with this wonderful instructions booklet. As I said, you can cut the wire based on the length that you need. There are also some tricks in order to let the pivot go through the wire, but I mean, I come at your place, at your house, and I assemble it. Don't worry. So parentesi, according to me, is actually that concept of minimal, few components, but to have a 360 degrees light. And this pivot here that allows you to have this 360 degrees movement, I mean, it's a lot. Of course, without the company who solved this technical problem by creating these handlebars, and this is the magic, I think, to have and keep a teamwork, let's say. Another magic thing, since in the next slide, actually, I will talk about, so we will finish, by the way, the last objects. This is one of my favorite toys. I gave this as a gift to my father when he came back from New York. Gave me this Obermaster sphere as a gift. He gave it to me gray, and I remember that I was quite. I thought gray was quite sad. So as soon as I found it colorful, I gave this as a gift to my father. So, according to me, this is one of those toys that allows you to, besides the fact that it's also very much connected to geology, because there are some mineral shapes that are following this geometric shape, and that probably Castiglioni, after looking at this, decided to design a lamp called Talaxacum. Here, designed 1988 for Floss, still in production, of course, with LED lights, updated to today's technology, and it was designed with the connection that you have seen in the toy, because in the toy there are some links, some connections, and the ones that he found between the triangles are even simpler. And in such a lamp, he wanted to create a kind of chandelier, a sphere with a lot of light bulbs, and he was able to do it also in a very technical way, because in the moment you turn the lamp off, the light off, you see the sculpture. So it's everything is shown. I really like the name. It's Talaxacum. I like to say this in all the languages, like Savion, Le Pissenlit, Löwenzahn, Kleptrix, Olidanchik in Russian, the lion's teeth. And it's fascinating the fact that, everyone, when we are kids, like blow to this flower. Besides the kids in the desert or in the North Pole, everybody, I think, once in our lives, we blowed into this flower, even just to, let's say, make a wish. So my wish is to, let's say, remain like a kid, remain attached to my father, who made me laugh a lot. On one hand, I have the responsibility of telling you serious things, of course, and on one hand, I have this kid that doesn't want to grow up. On the other hand, I have this wheel of waiting you in our foundation, physically, let's say, live, with Linia as well, and keep telling you stories. So I'll turn this sharing off, and I am available for the Q&A session. I actually thanked you at the beginning because you were available, and I thank you now for the story that you have told us so far. Again, this is the Q&A session. If anybody has a question, so you said that I have been one of the most frequent, let's say, visitor of the studio. There are many stories in that place, and also linked to your father's projects. They're all very interesting, and each project is a different story. It's like a life lesson, because they are like pearl, just like we mentioned before, like in the Alco's case, that beyond the object there is a whole context that is very interesting to highlight and to emphasize and to tell. But I want to say again, I want to repeat that I wanted to invite you in school, but in any case, when we will go back uh, physically in our schools. I will continue to bring my students to visit your foundations, because, and this is the other thing that I want to give you. I also did this for the other two, but I also want to thank you because for the whole I want to thank you for the whole work that you're doing in preserving the memory. Besides the fact that they're part of your families, fathers, grandfathers, and whatsoever, but you created something that is an is a value for everybody. To preserve the memories of these three masters in Milan, it means that we are defending and preserving also a whole school of Italian design, and actually the whole country, also economically, was awarded by these three men. I mean, unfortunately, this year we skipped the Design Week, and the Design Week is still one of the most important events in the world. And the Design Week and the movement of the Italian design that we have around the city of Milan, it exists also because of people like your father and the companies that were founded during that time and that became brands, famous brands, international brands, like you said, like you mentioned, Floss and many others. So I thank you again. I know that you do this because of passion and love, but at the same time, you're doing something good for everybody else, for the city of Milan, for Italy, and for the culture of Italian design on a global level. So now I would like to leave the, let's say, if anybody would like to say something. Massimo wrote object slash project. It's the same question that I've asked also to Margherita and Paola. So your father, one of the design masters, left a lot of objects, a lot of icons, because they're not projects or objects, they're icons of design, icons of made in Italy, when made in Italy is not only fashion, but also the well made. But these objects, are they also projects? I know it's a question. I would like that this question is an incentive for the curiosity of our students, but how much objects and how much projects they are? Well, if you look at the etymology of the project, it means to project, so to bring something beyond, starting from a need. So according to me, going back to the origins and see that an object like a simple peg like this one can be well designed, it means that there is a lot of work for the designs. It's hard for me to call them architects or designers. Of course, this is how they're called, but I like more to say that they are, well, project. She said projectors, but designers basically. In English, it's designer, because designers are the ones that are able to improve the object. So to me, object and project are quite linked to each other. Let's say it seems stupid, I know, but in the project there is always a smart object, or at least you try to create a smart object. On the other hand, an object might be designed better, let's say improved through the design. A simple object might stay there, it's simple, it's good, but if a designer works on it, why not? It can improve the object itself. So it doesn't mean that today you need to design the mask the design mask, because now the need is to put the mask on that it's appealing also for those who are looking at us. It's actually trying to look at that mask that we will have to live with for a few months, and trying to understand all the technologies that we can put inside of that mask. And maybe design, I don't know, a smile, or make it transparent so you're able to see the other person smiling underneath, otherwise the kids are frightened. Let's think about it. Yeah, I mean, the word design actually means project. Then they use the word design. They start to use the word design in Italian, not in English. In Italian, in not in a correct way. And it is because we talk about design even when we talk about things that are not they are not projects. We use the word design even in situations where actually there isn't a lot of design. Yes, I mean, I go back to this. I I want to follow up. So not even design. This is industrial design. Industrial design means a lot of numbers, serial production. Going into everybody's apartments is the ideal, but in many people's apartments, Vico Magistretti would have wanted to design an umbrella, for example. So my father was able to do it with just with a switch, and it's good. Any questions so far in the chat? We don't have question. Just a great talk and amazing stories. Thank you so much. Elena. Elena wrote, according to you, can you read it? Okay, Elena is asking, according to you, which designer today, let's say under 40, is close in some way to this very simple approach, solid approach, but at the same time surprising and playful approach that was typical of the master Achille? So who today is closer to Achilles' approach that was simple, solid, but at the same time surprising and playful? So, I can answer you in this question with a whole series of designs. My father's luck was that, okay, he was a teacher, yes, but he was, let's say, he had a lot of different shades in a way. You have to think about Achille Castiglioni as a cake and start to cut some slices of cake, and you take one slice is the irony, another slice is functionality, another one the minimalism, so the reduction of the component at its minimum. Every designer, I think, took something from Castiglioni, Sozzas, Magistretti, Munari, Marco Zanuso, Enzo Mari. For example, the reduction of the components. Um, so or the lightness of Albini in the stairs, for example. So really, it's there isn't only one hair. I might mention Giulio Iacchetti, Matteo Avagni, Lorenzo Palmeri, Lorenzo Damiani, Marco Mazzini. I might mention, I mean, this is just the part. Odoardo Fioravanti, who, by the way, actually they all attended to the 100% Achille. I might mention Jasper Morrison, even more famous than the one that I just mentioned, Patricia Occhiola. But she said under 40. So no, they were all over 40 actually. But because to me, for example, Michele De Lucchi to me is a kid. I mean, he was a kid to my father. Renzo Piano, Michele De Lucchi, they're all kids to me. And tell me, next question. I think we need to ask. So let's see who we should involve. There's also Lisa Hokemeyer. Francesco has a question. Well, first of all, we have a white parenthesis. Well, by the way, this year is an important anniversary. I mean, me and the parenthesis, let's say, we share the birthday in a way. I have a question for you though. Once, during a visit in the studio, you said something very interesting to me. Now I can't remember the exact term, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was about the fact that we should an object rest. leave it dead and then it will mature. It's something that I found very interesting. And I, by the way, I'm a teacher in Malangoni. I teach in the visual area, but this is something that I also tell my students. Even though we're not talking about products, we're talking about the layout or a graphic design. So could you please tell something about this aspect of let an object, let's say, ripe in a way? Yeah, I mean, it's just living time. Just give time to the objects. It's actually what we are living right now. The only good thing of this bad moment, of mm, this lockout, is that it gives us the right time to stop and think about something. Besides those who are constantly connected and they have some few slots in between meetings, I have to say that I'm quite happy to have found the moment to, well, let's say I am a geologist, let's say, borrow to design, but to let the things deposit. So the information, let them sediment. And my father used to do this a lot because he had this thing of taking his own time, and to look at the objects and to transform them, of course. So surely to have also, maybe he wasn't victim of the emails, he wasn't victim of the internet, so of course it was different. And on one hand, this technology is helping us a lot. On the other hand, also is an obstacle, is a restriction, because we don't have time to think about stuff. We don't have the time to do that. And the let it stay there because it was a jar that it was a jar that sorry, of caper that they let my mother grow in a way, sediment. And I always think about the same thing, because I always think about that jar, because they said, well, just let it there, just leave it there, then it will mature, it will sediment, and it will be something after a while. So I always think about that. So even such a simple object, just leave it there, because someone in the future will transform it, I don't know, into a jewel, someone else into a lamp, in a couch, another person will transform this into another toy, maybe more with more light, I don't know, just leave it there. Thanks to Francesco. We also talked about this with the other foundations. We talked on the time topic, that maybe in the latest years what we missed in the design field is that we didn't have time. We run too much, we run too quick. Sorry, there's a Paolo Rini. I just want to give a hug to Paolo Rini. I know him very well. I wait you, Paolo Rini. Hi Giovanna, you're engaging and efficient even through the video, but I can't wait to visit you in the studio. A hug. So hug to him. And yes, there is this, we had this moment, for example, in his career, in my father's career, he designed a camera for kids in 1967, when the cameras weren't these objects, actually small like this one, but the cameras were like squared with, I mean, I'm sure you have seen it in cartoons, the one with the flash and with the tripod. And in 1957 those cameras were perfect, but they asked to Castiglioni the design ergonomic camera for kids. It was so futuristic, so new, so avant-garde, that they didn't appreciate it. And it wasn't actually an annoying thing for the Castiglioni's brothers. For both of them, it was an opportunity to say, okay, the company didn't believe in this project, okay, let's move on. Today, if we put that camera in production, very ergonomic, with only one button, and it was quite close to this object, I mean, it would be our business, but it's too easy today. The interesting thing is to be able to design for the future, yes, but to have a company which believes in the future, in the project that you are designing for the future. Because today, how many companies are putting an object in production that is a prototype presented in design week, and then it never goes into real production? It's presented in design week, yes, it's the 1000th project presented in design week. And this is the other topic. This was, by the way, the answer to the question by Chiara Castagnola. Was there a project maybe at the beginning of the career that wasn't understood, appreciated, and eventually reevaluated in the future? Now Saudri is saying this is the other topic, because a lot of young designers, for example, they are let's say restricted in by the companies, actually forced by the companies to have a lot of boundaries, a lot of obstacles. How would your father reacted to this? Well, my father, probably, he was the offspring of the future in a way. He loved technology. He loved to be updated. He actually annoyed all the workers in the company, in the factory, to always be updated. And surely he would have never gave up if a company said to him, "Look, for this year, no, we can't produce this. Let's do it next year." He was a kind of fighter, because he actually fought also with the worker, because he wanted to solve their problems as well through the design of functional things. I mean, if nobody believed in the project, if nobody loved, if the entrepreneur didn't love the project, that's it. It's okay. You don't go to another company. Maybe today you have this kind of game, so if a company says no, you go to another company. So if Floss said no, I go to Otemide. I have to say that maybe that generation of architects designer was more ethical in a way. So if Floss said, "Look, architect, no, we can't do this," that's it. Today, society brings us to try and try and try again. So maybe I think that today you have the way and the possibility to try again and again to see if you can find some companies who believed in your design. So what Massimo said earlier, the object that then becomes a project. But you need a company who believes in that. Cosimo Fazzolini said, capacity of synthesis, clear capacity of synthesis in the graphic. Is there an addition of drawings and sketches, maybe with the mental processes that brought to the final solution? Yes. In part, we have seen in the presentation of Parentesi the steps from Pio Manzù, number 1, until number 6, well, Castiglioni basically completely changed the path of Parentesi. You have seen it also in the sketches of Arco. So, to my father, the capacity of synthesis and to synthesize, I mean, the graphic to him were fundamental. Max Biel, Max Huber. There was a whole generation of graphics who worked next to the architects, and they were very important in the exhibitions. So they also had a way to talk a lot between each other. So my father had the opportunity to talk about the graphic and to experiment individually, like Francesco said earlier. So to make the design process efficient, also in the graphic communication, also in a packaging. For example, the packaging of Parentesi explains Parentesi alongside with the booklet, but even better than the booklet, it's all here. Sometimes you wonder in creating a very special graphic design, perfect and so on, when actually the object itself should help you already in telling a story. So, I mean, look at here. I am in my home garden, in between my stuff, with my toys, my stupid stuff, in front of a screen. I'm able to explain, to tell a story. And you are designers, you are good designers. You can do it with a video in 2 minutes. You can tell what you want, of course, in a smart way. in a brief way and efficient. I think it's possible. The important thing is that it's a teamwork. So the important thing is that the graphic helps the engineer, who helps the designer, who helps the guy in the packaging, and then yes, you can do it. Of course, if you are alone and alone you try to design and try to save the world, no, you can't. Okay, good. I love to work in a team. Another thing that we try to convey to our students, and it's really important, teamwork. I like to describe the designer as a director, but you need a team. Domitilla Dardi, daughter of very important father, architect, she's a young critic of design, let's call her like this. She studied history of art. She didn't follow the father's path, father's trace, but she created a new design week called Edit Napoli, and Edit is a fair, basically, that she started with another woman. So two women who together decided to be a designer in a way. So it's perfect. So I see the comment of Massimo Zanatta: a man is a social animal. So this, yes, Aristotle, yes, and this damn virus forces us to be distant. But if we continue to share our skills, capacities, know-hows, call it whatever you want, but our capacities, we need to put them together. We don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. I'm not a designer. I really can't do anything in design, but with an illustrator, I wrote a book with Marco Mazzini, who is a designer, a very young designer. I designed the displays in the studio. I'm still learning every day a lot of things, because Aristotle is the starting point of all of this. Man is a social animal. Well, I would say that after this Zanatta quotation, man is a social animal, I think that it links all the topics that we have mentioned today, especially our real situation, contemporary situation, forcing us to be distant, but at the same time we try all the ways to be close to each other through the platforms. So I would finish this talk with this one, thanking you again. Again, also thanks to the other foundation with Margherita for Magistretti Foundation and Paolo Albini for the Albini Foundation. Thanks for being with us. Hi Stefano. Stefano appeared. I miss you a lot, guys. And the intention of the school, of course, is to go back physically to visit your foundations and to listen to your stories that are always very interesting. And as I said before, our lessons that we need. Well, thank you that you keep us alive. Thanks everybody for being with us. Go and design a good dinner. Thank you everybody. All right, bye bye.